Is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. As the norm is, on Fridays we do come early, and today we do come at 12 minutes past the hour of 9 p.m. And I want to guess that it is 12 minutes past the hour of 7 p.m. UK time for some of our favorite followers, and close by in Ireland, where LFC does hail from. So kindly indulge us. I've told you before that on Fridays we will be usually coming a little earlier than the usual 11 p.m. broadcast. Yes, because in tonight, of course, there is a game going to be played at 10 p.m. So there's that to look forward to. Then, of course, and other engagements that sort of compelled me to shift my timeline to this hour. But before we proceed any further, allow me to have our audios tested. Make sure we do not burn our fingers while at it. Before we even go any deeper, I've been struggling with internet connection for a better part of the evening. So I'm hoping, against hope, that the experience will be much broadcast is concerned. So should things not go according to plan, please do bear with me on that one. Or should we experience internet glitches along the way during the course of this podcast, please extend me the grace and your kindness to bear with me while we are at it. But we'll do our best and hope, pray and hope, pray that things go perfectly well, hope that things will go well. Yeah, so that we get things right. Otherwise, I hope you've had a wonderful week. It's been a very, very entertaining week in terms of football wise. Lots of joy, lots of tears, depending on what side of the aisle you do fall upon when it comes to a fair share of victories and losses that we did experience in the UEFA Champions League as well as the UEFA Europa League. So, and the UEFA Conference League, of course, notwithstanding, that action did come on Thursday night, in which Arsenal's opponents this weekend lost their game, while Arsenal on Tuesday had earlier on won. So there's been a bit of a mixed feeling or mixed reaction, depending on what side of the easy basking in waiting, in preparation, waiting for their engagement, Brighton and Hove Albion this weekend. Not that it's anything unique, but because Brighton themselves were equally anticipating for the same engagement. So plenty of action that will be coming our way this weekend, including the El Clasico from the Spanish La Liga is on this weekend. Does it often come this early in the season? Not often, but yeah, we will welcome it that it is coming this weekend. So yeah, we will do our best to enjoy it as it does come, and regard. Anyways, so for those of you that have been following all our respective conversations, we have previewed majority of the games so far. In as far as the Premier League is concerned, we did preview right from yesterday. We looked at the game between Leeds and West Ham United that is coming your way tonight at 10 p.m. East African time. We looked at some of the early kickoffs tomorrow, which will come at 5 p.m. contrary to the 2 p.m. kickoff between Chelsea and Sunderland. We looked at Tottenham Hotspur at home against their weekend opponent is eluding me. Allow me make the reference to that tally of fixtures. Yes, Newcastle against Fulham. And then we did look at Manchester United versus Brighton. For those of you that were part of our morning broadcast, we looked at Brentford versus Liverpool. And yeah, that's the action that will come your way between Friday and Saturday. And then on Sunday, we will have Arsenal in action at 5 p.m. against Crystal Palace. So we're going to go through that preview as well. We will have Aston Villa at home against Manchester City. Bournemouth will be at home against Nottingham Forest. Wolverhampton Wanderers, with all their poor form, will be at home against Burnley. And then to climax, match day 9 will be Everton versus Tottenham Hotspur. So we're going to be looking at some of these fixtures before flying away to Spain, where we'll look at the El Clasico, where it all ended in tears in the previous campaign for Real Madrid. Will their fortunes be better this season? We are waiting to see. So without wasting any further ado, let's kickstart things with Arsenal because they come up against a Crystal Palace, a very, very stubborn side, a very boggy side, but one that they know how to beat up against. Although this fixture last season at the Emirates Stadium ended in a 2-2 draw. Now, this season, Arsenal are being intentional on trying to better their fortunes from the fixtures that they had the previous campaign. When you compare the results that they had last season, this in some of those very fixtures, they are trying to prove their fortunes. Against Liverpool, it did not work out because last season they managed to pick up a 2-2 draw at Anfield. This time around, they lost by a goal to nil. I went to Old Trafford, it was a 1-1 draw. This season round, they managed to win. Against Fulham this season, they managed to win. Last season, it was a 1-1 draw at Craven Cottage. So they are trying to better that. And Crystal Palace falls among those games. Like I said, last season, it was a 2-2 draw between the two sides. For those of you that care to remember, with Joan Felipe Mateta and Eberechi Eze scoring for Crystal Palace on the night, while Leandro Trossard and Jakub Kivio were on target for the Gunners, who had taken a 2-1 lead in that game. Jakub Kivio scored, I think, in the 3rd minute, and then Eberechi Eze equalized in the 27th minute. The irony of which, Eberechi Eze is now an Arsenal player, a Crystal Palace player, so it's going to be a factor. Oliver Glasner said, they have good terms with him. They have nothing but to support him. However, there won't be any form of friendship on the pitch, and you couldn't expect any less. But it was a 42nd minute goal that gave Arsenal the difference at the time to make it 2-1, while Joan Felipe Mateta scored in the 83rd minute. For those of you who remember, William Saliba fumbling that ball before Joan Felipe Mateta looked that ball over David Villa's head to make it 2-2 at the time. So Arsenal are coming into this fixture hoping to better their fortunes than they had in that particular game, while they dominated all aspects in which they dominated most aspects of the game. Unfortunately, because they had about 67% ball possession in that game, they had as many as 12 shots on goal. Meanwhile, Crystal Palace had 15, although only 4 of those were on target, while Arsenal had 6 on target. Dean Henderson came up with a couple of saves, and he will be required to sort of do the same this time around when they meet. The game comes in time when both teams had midweek engagements on the European continent, with Arsenal featuring in the UEFA Champions League, where they beat up against Atletico de Madrid by 4-0. All those goals scored in a space of about 13 to 14 minutes. In the second stanza, Gabriel Magalhaes latching onto a decently floated in ball by Declan Rice to open the scoring on the evening, I think around the 57th minute. And then moments later, it was Gabriel Martinelli pulling off a Thierry Henry kind of, scoring or, kind of strike on the ball to hit the back of the net beyond the reach of Jan Oblak, with Maz Lewis Kelly providing the assist in that game. Then subsequently, a burst from Victor Gyökeres, with Gabriel Magalhaes providing the assist. Speaking of Gabriel Magalhaes, who had a very, very decent game in that one, he is a doubt for the game tomorrow on Sunday against Crystal Palace, because he had an issue when he came off in that game against Atletico de Madrid. While many of us thought that Mikel Arteta was just doing his rotational play, having guaranteed that they are almost close to getting the victory, all the 3 points against Atletico Madrid. For Gabriel Magalhaes, he had an issue and he was withdrawn for Christian Mosquera. So ever since then, of course, bearing in mind that possibly Wednesday was just a recovery or a day of rest, Thursday, Friday, he's not trained, and they are waiting. Maybe he can train tomorrow before they play on Sunday. And yeah, that's what is happening within the Arsenal camp in as far as news is concerned, or injury news is concerned. Then might I add is that Arsenal fans, I do not know to what extent, but this week they got some sort of positive news about Gabriel Jesus, who did return to the turf with the kick of the ball there as December or January, the latest. So we are waiting to see. But the game does continue to come a little too early for Kai Havertz, who is again trying to beat the clock on his recovery to return to action. Same applies to Noni Madueke. Again, during the course of this week, we receive some reports that he had hit the turf to do some ball work. We are yet to see any images of that, so we'll keep it on the speculation side of it. And then, of course, Martin Odegaard, who is still out with that medial ligament injury. So that's the Arsenal, the injury news within the Arsenal camp, as we wait to see, to hear more of what's to come for them in the weekend. For Crystal Palace, not much injuries are there to worry about, apart from Chadi Wade with the knee injury, unless otherwise, but they do not have so many injury issues. In the midweek, like I said, they were also in action against Lanaka. That's in the UEFA Conference League. In the UEFA Conference League, where they lost by a goal to nil, they suffered their first defeat on the European scene during the course of the week, losing that game by a goal to nil. It's a game in which Oliver Glasner rested at least two of his key starters in Taichi Kamada and Adam Wharton in that midfield that we know is very, very combative. They're very relentless on the ball. Adam Wharton, quite a revelation, has been over the course of the summer, was linked with lots of gargantuan teams. To say the least, Liverpool being one of those, Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid were all being speculated around Adam Wharton because he is that good a midfielder. So those ones were rested, not entirely. They had to come on in the second half to try and salvage the reputation of Crystal Palace, but could never get things over the line as things happened on the evening. Now, again, when you look at the two sides, again, this is a very, very, oftentimes a very, very tricky fixture, might I add. As more often than not, Arsenal have won the fixture because over 32 meetings across the Premier League, there's only been 9 draws, with Arsenal having a lion's share of victories, 19, while Crystal Palace have managed only 4. So that tells you that whereas it's not an easy fixture, being a London derby in its own nature, Arsenal still find a way to crack it. They find a way to crack those cheat codes and win this tie. When you look at Crystal Palace in the first phase of last season, we're talking about the first 19 games. They worried themselves really. They did struggle through games, and in fact, when the Arsenal played them away at Selhurst Park, that game ended with Arsenal beating up against Crystal Palace by 5-1. For those of you that remember, with Ismail Sarr scoring what turned out to be a mere consolation for Crystal Palace, while Gabriel Jesus scored a brace. Gabriel Martinelli was on target, as well as Declan Rice and Kai Havertz were the goal scorers for Arsenal. Speaking of the goal scorers, like I've told you, Gabriel Jesus is absent, Kai Havertz is absent, so it looks like Arsenal will need the Eagles. Over the last 5 meetings across the Premier League, among sides, again, Arsenal have the lion's share of victories with 4 victories out of those 5 games and just 1 draw, which was the 2-2 draw at the Emirates Stadium last campaign. In those 4 victories for Arsenal, they've been quite high scoring fixtures, twice scoring 5, the other scoring 4, and another winning it by a goal to nil that was out to Selhurst Park, really conceding 2 goals. So they do not concede too many goals against Crystal Palace. When you look over the last course of over the last 5 fixtures, they've only conceded 4 goals. We're talking about an Arsenal side who this season again are very, very defensively solid. When you look at their numbers, when you look at their statistics, so far things are going their way. They've only conceded 3 goals. Only 2 have come from open play in that run of fixtures for the Gunners, and that open play goal came against Manchester City, brought Erling Haaland scoring against them. Then the other was a set piece play, Nick Voltmada against Newcastle, and then the spectacular free kick that saw them lose the game against Liverpool. So when you look at that, it should tell you one thing, that they're defensively solid. And Mikel Arteta was speaking today, was being asked about that quality of Arsenal, and he did say that but the last 3 seasons in which they've had the best defenses and have not gone on to win the Premier League title. Usually, the team with the best defense goes on to win the Premier League title. So he was saying they are the only outliers over the last course of 3 seasons, and we are on more occasions than not, we've spoken as to why they failed to, eventually clinch the Premier League title. At this time around, of course, their title rivals are Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, and all the others, because mathematically, even the most bottom side in Wolverhampton Wanderers, who only have 2 points from the opening 8 games with 0 victories, mathematically are still in it. So, anyways, so they come against a side who, by the way, have sort of improved on their scoring rates in terms, but again, not so significantly higher, because they've scored 12 goals in this campaign, and in those 12 goals, they've conceded 8, and they have a goal difference of 4. So you can see Crystal Palace are prone to conceding a good chunk of goals. They do not score too many. Not that Arsenal has scored many more than them. It's only a goal difference of 3 in comparison to Arsenal's 15 that they've scored. But Arsenal also do not concede as often. Like I've said, they've only conceded 3 compared that to Crystal Palace's 8. Nonetheless, it does not make it an easy game. We've seen Crystal Palace trouble big sides. We saw them beat up against Liverpool by 2-1. We saw them share the spoils with Chelsea in a goalless draw. I think that was on the opening weekend of the Premier League. So, yeah, but like I said, because they conceded 1 too many in their last fixture in the Premier League, they shared the spoils in a 3-3 draw against AFC Bournemouth, with João Felipe Mateta scoring a hat-trick in that game, including some penalties. Then also, he did miss another golden opportunity. Then you wind things further back, they lost to Everton by 2-1, and then beat up against Liverpool and West Ham by 2-1, and then a goalless draw against Sunderland. That's in as far as their form is concerned in their last 5. So 2 victories, 1 loss, and 2 draws. In comparison, Arsenal have only 1 draw in the last 5, and 4 victories. That's victory against Nottingham Forest, Newcastle, West Ham, and Fulham. Really keeping 3 clean sheets out of those 5 fixtures, while Crystal Palace have only kept 1 clean sheet in the last 5. So all of these things will matter. Now, but the key question that is going to be posed to this Arsenal side: can they stop Jean-Philippe Mateta? I think he is one of the most informal Premier League players that you will find today. Then 2, can they keep Ismail Sarr quiet? Because he is one of those guys that really knows how to, punish big teams. We've seen it against Liverpool. We saw it against Arsenal last season, and then of course in the home fixture, at Selhurst Park. Jean-Philippe Mateta has 5 goals. 3 of those came in the very last fixture. Of course, Brad Erling Haaland still leads by a mile in terms of goal scored with a tally of 11. But anyways, Arsenal will have Jean-Philippe Mateta to contend with. While they will have him to contend with, Crystal Palace on the other side will have a target man in Victor Gyökeres to deal with, because I want to believe that that best he managed to pick up against Atletico de Madrid will give him some form of confidence going into this fixture, because in the Premier League things have not really happened for him ever since he scored a brace against Leeds, followed by a goal against Nottingham Forest. He's not yet scored again in the Premier League, so we are still waiting for more of his goals on the Premier League. So where is going to be the biggest contest? Of course, usually, like the case always is in most games, you do expect that contest to be in the midfield, where Arsenal will deploy at least Martin Zubimendi, then they will deploy Declan Rice and Ebeleche Eze in that sort of attacking midfield role. That's the expectation. And then when you look at their versus the Crystal Palace side, who tend to play with a back 3 and then a midfield for 2 10s and a striker. Usually the 2 10s is Yeremi Pino and Ismail Sarr. Then the midfield is Taichi Kamada and Adam Wharton. Then on the flanks you have Daniel Munoz, you have Tyreek Mitchell, and then the back 3 has McCoy, it has Lacrosse, and then who is the other player? I'm trying to remember what his name is, but within Henderson in goal. So on the side of Arsenal, the back line, I could expect some changes, given that we saw two changes in their starting 11 that beat up against Atletico de Madrid, with Gabriel Martinelli coming in that place where Leandro Trossard started against Fulham, while Mazlou Kelly came in for Ricardo Carafiori. So we could see that swap once again for those Wolves to still maintain David Villa in goal. Now, with an issue happening to Gabriel Magalhaes, I'm going to go on a limb here, and any of these scenarios could happen. We could see, of course, Julian Timber at right back. We could see Ricardo Carafiori at left back, then William Saliba alongside Christian Mosquera, because every time Saliba was absent, it was Mosquera that started. Now, so if Mosquera does not get to start alongside William Saliba, then it could be Ricardo Carafiori starting as the left-footed centre-back in that role, and then you have Mazlou Kelly in left-back. It could be Pierre Hiccup, although I do not think and suggest that he could be handed his full debut in an Arsenal jersey against a team like Crystal Palace when he's just recovered from injury. So, but any of those possibilities can happen. It's just to say that Arsenal do have the numbers and the potent replacements that they would need to take on this Crystal Palace side, should it necessitate that. So, where does the danger lies in Crystal Palace? I've told you it's Ismail Sarr, it's Jean-Philippe Mateta, but also it's in those wing backs in Daniel Munoz and Tyrick Mitchell. We saw Daniel Munoz score against Everton, although they went on to lose that game by 2-1. Then in that midfield dominancy, Taichi Kamada and Adam Wanton can be relentless, but Arsenal equally have their danger men. Is it going to be Leandro Trossard? Bukayo Saka should be mainstay with Victor Gyökeres. I suspect it will be Trossard, Saka, and Victor Gyökeres with the midfield three that I've mentioned, unless otherwise. So, what is my prediction for this game? I'll go out on a limb and say Arsenal win this game by 2-1. I do not know, but for some reason, I think Arsenal get to concede in this fixture. Yes, you can keep Crystal Palace quiet, but keeping them quiet for an entire 90 minutes can be a tall order. That I know with absolute certainty. So I'm going for a 2-1 victory for Arsenal in this particular game. Anyways, let's quickly move on to other fixtures that will be coming your way this weekend. Like I said, Aston Villa will be up against Manchester City. Another beautiful but very, very difficult game for both sides. Aston Villa come into this game on the aftermath of losing their first game in the UEFA Europa League this season, when this by 2-1 in a game which they dominated in every aspect of the game but could not find a way to win. They do face off a Manchester City side that are in spectacular form, must I mention, because they are fresh from a 2-0 victory against Spain, in which Erling Haaland was once again on target, as well as the captain, Bernardo Silva, in that game. When you look at their current form, in as far as the last 5 games are concerned in the Premier League, you will see that Manchester City have won 4 out of their last 5 games. 4 out of their last 5 games. They beat up against Manchester United by 3-0, drew away to Arsenal in a 1-1 draw, beat up against Burnley by 5-1, beat up against Brentford by 0-0. That goal again scored by Erling Haaland. He scored a brace in the game against Burnley. He scored against Arsenal. He scored, I think, a brace against Man United. And then they beat up against Everton in another game in which he scored. So he is their usual suspect. He's their guy that doesn't miss. So he scored that brace against Everton as well. He's in just spectacular form. So everything that Manchester City do right, it is revolving around about Erling Haaland, especially in the final third of the pitch. While that midfield, it's still Tijan Reinders running the show alongside Nico Gonzalez in the absence of Rodri, who is been out through injury. So on the side of Aston Villa, they've equally been in very, very decent form. In the last run of games, they have won 3 out of the last 5 fixtures, while they have drawn the other 2. A goalless draw against Everton, a 1-1 draw against Sunderland, beat up against Fulham by 3-1, beat up against Burnley by 2-1, and then beat up against Tottenham Hotspur last weekend by a similar scoreline. Must I say, I had thought that they would lose against Tottenham Hotspur, but they did not do. So they've had that sort of kind of feel good factor about them in terms of picking up momentum. But like I said, go ahead Eagles sort of put a stop to that. When you look at their last 5 meetings, of course, Manchester City take the lion's share of this victory. But Manchester City have not won in their last 2 visits at the Villa Park. Last season, they got beat by 2-1 at the Villa Park, while Manchester City won the reverse fixture by a similar scoreline, beating up against Aston Villa by 2-1. When you wind things back to last season, but one, Manchester City beat up against Aston Villa by 4-1 at the Etihad Stadium, while Aston Villa beat them by 0-0 at Villa Park. So you can see that sort of trend. I do not suspect that it will continue, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. So again, Aston Villa have had some, issues here, there, and there in regards to their injuries. With particularly Yuri Tillemans has been one of those players that they have missed greatly. With the calf injury, Tyrone Mings suffered a knock. We do not know whether he will be back in action to feature for them. But they can be a very, very stubborn side. Morgan Rogers, once he clicks, he makes things happen. Wesan scored the only goal in the 4th minute that they managed to get against Go Ahead Eagles. That Daniel Malin has been not so bad. John McGinn, Andre Onana, and Kamara, Abubakar Kamara, Mati Cash, Ezri Konsa, and Pau Torres. Then Emiliano Martinez in that backline. Sorry, in the goal position. So on the side of Manchester City, of course, Pep Guardiola tends to rotate his team for fun. Whenever it pleases him, he will rotate his team, but at least you will guarantee that some people will start. That Donnarumma will be in goal, that you can take it to the bank. You can argue that Ruben Diaz will be in that game. So whether it will be Ruben Diaz alongside Nathan Ake or Joshko Vardiol alongside O'Reilly and Matthias Nunes, we'll wait to see. But Jan Reinders, Nico Gonzalez, Phil Foden, Savinho, Jeremy Doku, and Bud Allen Haaland are some of the figures you should expect in that midfield. Who wins the midfield battle? I think Manchester City get the edge in terms of quality. Jan Reinders, Nico Gonzalez, Phil Foden, or maybe Bernardo Silva, who knows? They have all that on their hands. But I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw in this one. I don't know whether it's more wishful than objective, but I'm going for a 1-1 draw between Manchester City and Aston Villa. These predictions are down in the comment section, and if you agree or disagree with what my submission is on that one. Then quickly, the other game, still on Super Sunday, still at 5 p.m., will be between FC Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest, while Wolverhampton Wanderers will be up against Burnley. Now, if you Wolverhampton Wanderers, if you lose this home game against Burnley, I think Vita Pereira could be one of the managers that gets shown the exit next. Remember, Graham Potter was the first to be shown the exit. Was it Graham Potter first? No, actually it was Nuno Espirito Santo. Then Graham Potter followed, Ange Postecoglou followed. So that means Nottingham Forest have fired 2 managers. So Victor Pereira wouldn't want to be the next. But I do suspect that if Burnley beat him, then he won't have much of it. I do not know what he will have to tell his bosses for that poor run of form where they've not recorded any victory so far this season in the opening 8 fixtures, but have only managed 2 draws against Tottenham Hotspur, and I think the other came against what? I struggle to remember, but they only have 2 points to their name. And then in the late kickoff at 7:30 p.m., that game will be between Tottenham Hotspur and playing away to Everton. Tottenham Hotspur had a very, very poor performance against AC Monaco. AC Monaco were very wasteful with their chances in the UEFA Champions League when they met Tottenham Hotspur. I think, was it on Wednesday or on Tuesday? I stand to be corrected. But they did feature in the UEFA Champions League, and that game ended in a goalless draw. But I did not think that Tottenham deserved that kind of result. Not one bit, because when you look at the statistics from that particular game, you will find that, for example, AC Monaco had 8 shots on target compared to Tottenham's 2. They had 8 shots off target compared to Spurs' 5. Ball possession was 56 compared to 44% of Tottenham. Now, again, Tottenham fans, in some circles, I won't say majority or many of them, but there's a certain growing frustration among the Tottenham fans because of the style of football that Thomas Frank is deploying. While they have become very, very difficult to score against, they are not so fan favorites of the sort of conservative style of football that he does deploy. They like to play that attacking football. They want expansive football because it's what they did experience in the many years of Harry Redknapp. It's what they experienced under Mauricio Pochettino for a very long time. They did experience that kind of football against Antonio Conte for a short while. Of course, with Jose Mourinho, it's a give and take. Sometimes it's attacking, sometimes it's defensive, but we all know how that ended. So in that sort of regard, and against and during Ange Postecoglou in his first campaign, again very attacking football. Some happened for his second season, although the results were very, very bad, that they had to get rid of him. So this is the kind of game against a very conservative side in Everton as well, David Moyes. So we will see what it has to offer come the weekend. But let's run away from the Premier League. Let's run away from the Premier League and head over to Spain, because in Spain today there's a game. Of course, as always, Real Sociedad up against Sevilla tonight at 10 p.m. East African time. Then, like I said, in the German Bundesliga, that game is already on. Werder Bremen are up against Union Berlin. Then in the Italian Serie A, AC Milan at 9:45. Kickoff is a minute. AC Milan up against Pisa, while Paris up against Nantes in the French League One. Same kickoff time as that AC Milan game. While Leeds up against West Ham United are coming just a bit in the next maybe 15 minutes. Kickoff gets underway. So I want us to discuss the El Clasico, because that's the final game I want us to preview before we call it tonight. Yes, that El Clasico will come on Super Sunday, but before Super Sunday comes, Girona will be up against Real Oviedo on Saturday. Espanyol will take on Elche. Athletic Bilbao will be up against Getafe. Getafe on the back of a 1-0 defeat against Real Madrid. Kylian Mbappe on target, I think, for his 10th La Liga goal of the season. Then Valencia will be up against Villarreal. Villarreal in the last game shared, I think, the scores against Real Betis in a 2-2 draw. Then, okay, let's see. Then, like I said, on Super Sunday, you have Mallorca up against Levante, Real Madrid up against Barcelona at 6:15 p.m. And then Osasuna will be up against Celta Vigo, while Rayo Vallecano will be up against Deportivo Alaves. So let's get into the thick of those sides. Both sides have a whole chunk of injuries to deal with. They have so many injuries to contend with. However, some could possibly return before the El Clasico, or just in time for the El Clasico. On the side of Real Madrid, Dani Carvajal is one of those out with a calf injury. David Alaba with a calf injury. Dani Ceballos struggling with a muscle injury. Dean Howson with a calf injury. Alexander Trent-Arnold has been out for some time with a hamstring injury. Antonio Rudiger struggles with a muscle injury, as well as Raul Asensio. All these were absent for their 1-0 victory against Juventus in the UEFA Champions League on Wednesday night. For those of you that do remember, that goal scored by Jude Bellingham in that game. Then on the side of Barcelona, of course, Jules Koundé suffered a knock. Robert Lewandowski suffering with the thigh injury. Dani Olmo with a calf injury. Joan Garcia has a meniscus injury. Rafinha, I think I've heard reports he's back in training. I do not know what extent of fitness, but has a muscle injury. Same Gavi with a knee injury. Gavi is out for months. And then Marc-Andre ter Stegen continues to struggle with a back injury. Now, this is the kind of fixture that Barcelona dominated throughout the entirety of last season. 4 times these sides met in the Supercopa Hispana, in the Copa del Rey final, and of course home and away in as far as the Spanish La Liga is concerned. And all those fixtures, Barcelona won them. If there's anything that is going to endear a Barcelona manager to Barcelona fans, is such victories against Real Madrid. Such victories against Real Madrid. Cup competitions, Spanish La Liga. Remember, Barcelona last season won the domestic treble, the Supercopa Hispana, in which they beat up against Barcelona by uh, by 5 goals to 2 in the Supercopa Hispana. Then they beat them in the Copa del Rey final by 3 goals to 2. Then they beat them by 4 goals to 3 when Barcelona hosted that tie in the Spanish La Liga. While the earlier fixture at the Santiago Bernabeu, where they will be meeting this weekend, Barcelona beat them by 4 goals to 0. Yes, a whooping 4 goals to 0 between Barcelona and Real Madrid from last season. So, I mean, does it get any worse than that? If anything, all those fixtures, by the way, all those losses between Barcelona and Real Madrid are some of the reasons why Carlo Ancelotti was sacked. Or okay, they had to let him go before the end of his contract. They had to part ways with him because they just couldn't stand it. They were just losing literally for fun against Barcelona, and they did not like it. So because it was humiliating in its own nature, they decided, nah, let's part ways. And now it is Xabi Alonso who is in charge of this Barcelona side. Sorry, of this Real Madrid side. He has changed the fortunes of Real Madrid. To be honest, I'm one of those that have been surprised by their results, not particularly their performances, but their results, because some of the performances, they have always found a way to win. They have found a way to win. They only lost them against Atletico de Madrid. That was on match day 7. They lost by 5 goals to 2 in that game. In the UEFA Champions League, they've won 3 out of 3, so you can't fault them for anything. But suddenly, I do think that there is room for improvement. But while there's still room for improvement, they've won 8 out of 9 fixtures. While Barcelona have won 7 out of 9 fixtures, they've lost 1, and then they've drawn the other, which puts them in second place with 22 points, below Madrid, who have 24 points from those 9 fixtures played on the La Liga standings. So then when you rewind things back into the 2020, when you wind things back into the 2023 campaign, 2023-2024 campaign, you will find that Barcelona beat up against Real Madrid at the Santiago Bernabeu. Barcelona lost to Real Madrid at the Santiago Bernabeu by 3 goals to 2, while Barcelona beat up against Real Madrid Real Madrid beat up against Barcelona home and away, 2-1 and 3-2. Then they also met in the Spanish Super Cup for that same season, and Real Madrid beat Barcelona 4-1. Then, I mean, it's just a sort of what do I call it? A cut and run match. But who is in a worse? I mean, I watched Barcelona against Olympiacos. Until Olympiacos got that red card, they were far from convincing. Yes, they were leading the game by 2-1, but Olympiacos was trying to have a good go at it. And unfortunately for them, they got a red card, and then Barcelona went riots. When Barcelona went riots, what did end up happening was Barcelona, of course, Fermin Lopez scored a hat-trick. Marcus Rashford scored a brace in that one. Who was the other goal scorer? Yes, Lamine Yamal from the penalty spot was among the goal scorers. But am I convinced that Barcelona are going to go to the Santiago Bernabeu and do what they managed to do there last season? Certainly not. And not when you're missing out on all those players through injury. Not really. Because Robert Lewandowski was a good part of that. Kylian Mbappe would want to collect some bragging rights off Lamine Yamal, off the Marcus Rashfords, the Ferran Torres, the Fermin Lopez, Vinicius Junior would want the same. I do not think we may see as many goals as we did last season, but I'm going to go for a Real Madrid victory in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if it finished 3-2, but it could be a 2-1 victory for Real Madrid. So I'm going for Real Madrid to win that fixture. I mean, Xabi Alonso, like I said, has a sort of a, because when you look at both sides, they score many goals, but they also concede at least nearly half what they score. So Real Madrid have scored 20 goals, they've conceded 9. Barcelona have scored 24 goals, they've conceded 10. Of course, Barcelona have the better goal difference. And on paper, you would argue they have the best attack and the best defense in comparison to Real Madrid. Real Madrid, with all the revenge that they need to pull up on, with bearing in mind that Xabi Alonso, this is the reason as to why he was brought in to replace Carlo Ancelotti. He will know that this game, and again, he's a player that has played in this fixture before, so he knows more than anybody else what it means to play in the El Clasico, what it means to win the El Clasico, what it means for bragging rights, what it means for the revenues financially to keep that dominancy, what it means in Spanish football, what it means in global football, and everything that comes with it, because it's the kind of fixture that can make you lose your job. It's the kind of fixture that endears you to your bosses and to the Real Madrid fans and vice versa. Now, I'm not saying that if any of these sides lose this game, that their manager will be in trouble, but if you're Xabi Alonso, you want to do whatever it takes to avoid defeat in this game. I do not remember the last time we saw a draw between these sides, and that's why I do not anticipate there to be one. Real Madrid have not drawn a single game this season. Barcelona have only drawn one. Now, you could say they were either far better than all the other opponents, or it's just not within their thing to draw. They either win or lose. You could take that to the bank. So I'm going for Real Madrid to win this particular fixture. Anything can still happen. Anything can still happen. But yeah, that's what I do anticipate to happen in the El Clasico. Do let me know what your thoughts are, what your predictions are for the El Clasico from Spain, coming to you on Super Sunday at 6:15 p.m. East African time. That's the other game that will be coming your way over this weekend. Then okay, let's proceed to, I think, the Italian Serie A before we look to wrap this up in the next maybe 5 minutes or so. Okay, in the Italian Serie A, Como will be away to Parma. That's on Saturday. Udinese will play Lecce. Napoli will be up against Inter Milan. Yes. Napoli up against Inter Milan. Very, very big game to look forward to. That game coming at 7 p.m. East African time. Big game to look forward to. Napoli up against Inter Milan. One that's because I think AC Milan are top of the pile with 16 points. Now, Napoli, Inter Milan, and Roma occupy the next 3 positions with 15 points all. So it's going to be a very, very important game. But in the late kickoff on Saturday in the Italian Serie A will be between Cremonese against Atlanta. So, but the game between Inter Milan and Atlanta, Inter Milan comes second, and between Inter Milan and Napoli is very, very crucial. Inter Milan have done well, to be honest. They've all done well because they all have 5 victories. They have 2 losses, no draws. AC Milan, on the other side, have had 5 victories, 2 draws, and a loss. That's what differentiates them. They're already in action. AC Milan against Pisa as we speak. So care not to miss out on that action. But yeah, second versus third in the Italian Serie A. Who would I fancy to win? Napoli were just humbled in the UEFA Champions League against PSV. They lost by 6 goals to 2. I mean, that was cringeworthy. knowing Antonio Conte, he must have been exploding in that dressing room. He must have been exploding in that dressing room. And he's the kind of manager that wants to be quick to correct the kinds of mistakes that you may have committed. Under the charges um, of Inter Milan is Christian Kiev, uh, is Christian Kiev. Sorry. So again, he also wants to know uh, uh, he wants to continue to show that he was the perfect replacement for Simone Inzaghi, and so far it started off well. He just needs to keep pushing, and winning a game against Napoli would go a long way to make that kind of statement that you want. If AC Milan do win their game against Pisa tonight, of course that won't change the standings on the table, regardless of who wins between these two sides tomorrow. But it's something. It's something. It's something. Going into that fixture tomorrow at 7 p.m. East African time. Elsewhere, in the German Bundesliga, like I told you, Borussia Mönchengladbach will be up against Bayern Munich. But earlier than that, or around the same kickoff time, you will have Augsburg up against RB Leipzig. You'll have Eintracht Frankfurt against St. Pauli, while Hamburg SV will welcome Wolfsburg. Hoffenheim will be up against Heidenheim, while Borussia Dortmund will be up against Cologne. And then in the French League One, Paris Saint-Germain will be up against Brest. Expect PSG to win. Nothing more, nothing less. AC Monaco will be up against Toulouse, while Lens, RC Lens, or as some people prefer to pronounce it the English way, Lens, will be up against Olympique Marseille. Olympique Marseille lost in midweek against Sporting CP by 2-1. They were down to 10 men in that particular fixture. So I'm sure Roberto Di Zerbi will be sort of in a way desperate to get his team back to winning ways, because you do not want to kill that kind of momentum that they had built, including beating up against PSG in their run of fixtures in as far as things are concerned. Then on Super Sunday, like I've told you, in the German Bundesliga, you have Bayer Leverkusen up against Freiburg. VfB Stuttgart will be up against Mainz, while in the Italian Serie A, Torino will be up against Genoa. Hellas Verona will take on Cagliari. Sassuolo will be up against Roma, while Fiorentina will take on Bologna. And then we'll have another big game in the Italian Serie A when Lazio, under the charges of Mauricio Sarri, he did return, will be up against Igor Tudor. They've had their struggles so far this season. They're not even in the top 5. Last I checked, they were about 7th on the the standings, following that defeat against Como the previous weekend. So they've lost 2 games on the spin, having lost to Real Madrid in midweek. So Igor Tudor will want to get things fixed as early as possible for his side. Then in the French League One, Lille will up against Metz. Angers will take on Lorient, while Auxerre will be up against Le Havre. Rennes will be up against Nice, while Lyon will be up against Strasbourg for those other fixtures to come your way in as far as the French League One is concerned. Italian Serie A, German Bundesliga, of course, we've gone through the Spanish La Liga, we've gone through the Premier League, and what there is for you to come. Do let me know what game you're looking forward to watch this weekend. What are you most looking forward to out of all those big games that are coming? The El Classico, I will tell you about, Napoli versus Inter Milan, or Inter Milan versus Napoli. I will tell you about Lazio up against Juventus. Very, very big game. Mönchengladbach against Bayern Munich is not a small game, so it should be one of those games that you look forward to. In the Premier League, of course, they're not classics, but again, Man City Aston Villa is a good game to watch. Arsenal Crystal Palace, a London derby, Brighton versus Manchester United, a very, very big game given how dominant Brighton have been against United in recent fixtures. My prediction was a 2-1 victory for Man United. For those of you that missed yesterday's broadcast, but we will look over those fixtures tomorrow. To all our new subscribers, I say welcome to the Football Tribe UG community. Continue liking what we do, continue watching under the video section, under the short section. Just go over there and watch all that content. Otherwise, allow me wrap it here and wish you a wonderful rest of the night. Yes, we've not made it 1 hour because we're 10 minutes late thereabout. So, but yeah, we will continue the conversation tomorrow morning in as far as the weekend preview for the discussions to come your way. So yeah, keep it locked on the Football Tribe YouTube channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye and stay blessed. Have a blessed weekend. Enjoy. Bye bye for now.